Welcome, everybody. Another episode of Two Chaps, Many Cultures, episode 198. And we are separate. I mean, we're separate every time we do this, but now we're not just one time zone apart. Now we're 6 hours time zones apart because the smarter of the two chaps, this guy here, decided to go to Europe. Well, we'll talk about that, what it is like to travel to Europe, and about the place in Europe specifically where he's from. So hang tight. Welcome, everybody, to Chaps, Many Cultures. What show is this, Brett? The show?
What the number one show on the internet of the business of culture and the culture of business, where just too much culture is barely enough. How are you today, mate?
Barely enough. And your internet is barely enough to join us today, which is awesome because we have you join us from... Where in the world are you joining us from? That's not just a question for Brett. That's a question for all of you. You see it scrolling there on the bottom of the screen. So we know you're in Poland, and we said you're going to be in southern Poland. But what does that actually mean? Where are you?
Okay. I am in what is known as Małopolska. This is well, there's two kinds of Małopolska. There's the official governing zone of
Now, Brett, this sounds amazing, and yet we are having difficulties hearing you because your internet is playing tricks on you. So how about we try something that we haven't tried before, because this is the first for this program that the two hosts are really on two different continents. We'll try something that is new as well. We'll have one of the co-hosts leave the screen and come back in and see how that changes our connection. Let's do that real quick to make sure that we get the full picture and the narrative from southern Poland. And while Brett is doing that, I want to remind you, those of you who are in fact traveling, please remember you might be vaccinated, and maybe you are, maybe you're not, but we still have these to wear, okay? Sometimes. Don't get cocky just because you're vaccinated. There are people that depend on you being smart about this. Brett, your image is coming in clearer now, so tell us more about southern Poland.
Okay, so we'll try again. Maybe it's when I speak that it slows down. Is this better?
It is, yes.
Cool. Well, okay, I was saying historically a larger region in the southern, mostly southeast of Poland. So this is the area that encompasses the areas of border of Slovakia, some of the border of Germany, and also the Ukraine. And historically, the nobility of Poland historically, generally, Krakow used to be, for a lot of the history of Poland, was the capital. And of course, it was often protected from some of the conflicts that took place in other parts of the country. But then was impacted by, of course, many during its history as well, and of course, most recently in the Second World War, at the start of the Second World War, where it actually took the brunt of the initial attacks of the Nazis. But very wonderful place. This is just a beautiful place in the world. Very peaceful. I'm actually in our home here. It's a wonderful 22 degrees, beautiful countryside. with
Brett,
wonderful little villages.
You might be in Europe. You might be back on metrics, but our friends in North America don't know what 22 degrees means. What is that in Fahrenheit? Well,
okay. Well, I don't know. What is that? It's about probably.
Hey, turn your phones on and do the math. It's not that hard. The rest of the world gets it. So 22, it's probably the upper 80s, I guess, right?
Yeah. But
when you say,
nice.
when you say southern Poland, so if those of you who don't know where that is on the map, the device you're watching this on has a map function. After we're done, you can map it, Googleize it, whatever it is you do. But to add a little bit more texture to the location and the specificity of that location, you're bordering Slovakia, you're bordering the Ukraine, right? And you're not too far away from the German border. So traditionally, and Hungary is also only a hopscotch away. So traditionally, that part of Central Eastern Europe has it not been an area where cultural paths have been crossing? Isn't that an area that is affluent to many different European cultures? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So the area that I'm in now, the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire historically, and they kind of moved their influence within this kind of region of Poland over the last century. So you've got those influences, and then of course we're not very far from the Carpathian Mountains, which is between Slovakia and Poland, is that wonderful kind of culture of the Góralski, the Highlander culture, which exists there, which is known for its wonderful, very, very ornate dress, very unique dialect, also a way of playing music, which is also wonderful to witness. So there's just so many parts of this area that kind of have had influence on it, but also influence outside of it, because it is central. It is really Central Europe. So this region has been very strategically important for a lot of the surrounding empires, as they have kind of fought for control of the central part of Europe, and hence the crossways of trade and things like that. So it's been rather an area that's kind of suffered because of that, from a lot of conflict and influence. But to the Polish people here, of course, and I engage with them a lot. The Polish spirit is very strong and proud because of its ability to have fought off those influences over the last 1,000 years, and now standing pretty autonomous, even though it's still part of the European Union. Yeah.
So when you said ornate dress and music tradition, is that what you put in our slide that announced this episode? Are these the costumes or the traditional garb that you were referencing earlier?
Yeah, you'll see the traditional hats and the dress of the women. They're very ornate. Some of these outfits run thousands and thousands of dollars. They are hand stitched with all the wonderful beadwork and lace work that goes into them, and they really do hold a special place for the people, the Highlander people. And of course, that comes with a lot of traditional foods as well, wonderful smoked cheeses and meats and things that they have here. So and Zakopane, which I guess would be known as the capital of the winter capital of Poland, where Europe comes to play, and also has created a lot of wonderful sporting stars, especially in the ski jump, right? Those crazy people. Is a wonderful place which is just kind of rich with this culture. So it's always a wonderful place to visit. Yeah.
Now the ski jump, I want to address this real quick, because ski jumping, for those of you in North America, this may be, you may have no idea what we're talking about. In many parts of Europe where we have mountains and snow, and also in parts of Asia, mainly in Japan, ski jumping is a winter sport tradition that is for daredevils and is a lot of spectacle. And back in the time when Europe was still separated by an Iron Curtain and divided by the Cold War into East and the West, there was a ski jumping competition. There have always been ski jumping competition that crossed that iron fence. And I come from a part of Germany where ski jumping is also in high regard. In fact, I have members of my family, or one side of my family, who is native to the mountains, were had an instrumental part in creating these international ski jumping competitions. So while I'm not a ski jumper, I know people in my German family who have been on these ramps, on these slopes around the world. And Zakopane is obviously the Polish destination that every ski jumper knows. And so there's always been an exchange based on that athletic activity between those locations in the Carpathian Mountains, or in the Alps, or in Norway, or in Finland, or in Japan, where all these great ski jumpers come from, right? So sometimes when politicians and military forces, when people decide we're going to draw a line, or we're going to separate, or we're going to restrict how much cultures are interacting with each other, then there will be other avenues which will allow them to connect at a different level. And ski jumping in that case, in your location, would be one of those avenues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're very proud of their abilities in this sport. And one of the most famous, Adam Moish, who was years ago just pretty much won everything. The Olympics, the World Championship was kind of a staple, and he was born and bred there, and kind of grew up on the ski jumps. For, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but it's not for me. I don't think it's not as more. I'd be go and have a look at the ski jump and think, yeah, imagine what it'd be like to just jump off a perfectly good hill and go a million miles an hour and try and sail down the side of the mountain. I could think of more relaxing ways to get to the bottom.
Maybe, but less exciting. So if you ever get a chance, I would implore you, if you ever, whatever mountain you're in, whether you're in Garmisch-Partenkirchen or in Zakopane or in Bischofshofen or in Innsbruck or in Sapporo, and wherever in the world they have these ramps, if you get a chance, walk up there. You don't have to bring your skis, if they probably won't allow you to do that anyway, but just walk up there and look down into the abyss, and then know what's going on. That is, well, I'm going to be honest, I peed my pants, right? But it was still impressive. Hey, Janet. Janet is watching down in Florida. Thanks for tuning in, Janet. Thanks for being here, supporting our program. Love it. We're live from Poland with the Aussie himself. So tell us, I mean, we know that you shared this with us before. You are married to a smart, beautiful woman from Poland. That is your connection to that culture. Now, you've been back and forth to Poland several times. You speak the language, and you're not in Warsaw, you're not in Kraków, and you're not in Poznan. You're out in the boonies right now. So you are living the village life in Poland. How long did it take? What did you have to do as an outsider to be accepted by the group on the ground? Or was it the marriage certificate that gave you trust? Or how were you able to break in? Or were you able to break in? What did you do?
Yeah, so this is a great thing about the culture, is that it's one of those cultures that relies on the credibility, gaining credibility through the connections of other people. So having the marriage certificate helped. I got a walk up start, you know, when I arrived here, because it is a culture that is is really reliant on a network and the trust it's built between a community. So I did have that ability to do that. Now, of course, when I first started traveling here, I had to, in that sense, I had to check, and I've said this before, I've had to check my Australianness at the border. Because if I'm not with my wife and I'm not with other people I know, I have to become, I was even doing it today in the store, where it can be confronting to have somebody who's serving you in a store be very demanding that you must come up with the right change. You know, this is one of those confronting things. It's just, you know, why don't you have the small change, you know? And they'll sit there with your note and wait for you to shuffle through your pockets with the line. Do it in a very abrupt and confronting way. And no amount of my friendly Aussie style is going to ever crack that facade. They are not going to be impressed by it. They don't care. You need to get the small change out. You need to do it now. And if you don't have it, they're going to pretty much let you know that they're dissatisfied with that. So, so that it is, even though I can speak the language and I can interact in many ways, that doesn't necessarily give me a walk-up start if I'm not with people I know and I don't have that connection. But so it is a culture where you would have to, if you were doing business here, you would have to kind of find somebody to help you along in making these connections, which will help you kind of save money sometimes, ostensibly, but also kind of smooth the wheels of industry as you go along. You can't just kind of rely on your own good graces to impress people here. They're not easily impressed, the Polish, you know. You have to work pretty hard at it.
Well, did you ever get that level of grace period? Because in the village that you're presently in, you're known as Marta's husband, and you're part of that extended family, and they've seen your face before. So does it take a couple of days till they realize, oh, that's our Aussie extended friend here, we cut him some slack? Or is that not a thing?
Yeah, it is a thing if they know me, if they know that I'm here and they've seen me before. But otherwise, the stranger that I've never met before or something like that wouldn't necessarily, it wouldn't even help me if I said, like in America, in the US, I can get away with saying, well, you know, I'm just the dumb Aussie, you know. Here I can say that, and they say, okay, that doesn't matter. You can speak the language. Sometimes speaking the language is, they kind of hear you speaking the language, so they just say, well, what's your problem? You speak the language, you know, like.
So you should understand the rest too, right? Mm-hmm.
You should naturally understand how we do things here, and then therefore you must have been here long enough if you can speak the language and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a very kind of complicated, nuanced relationship with people that you don't know, and can be, on the surface, can come off as unfriendly and very abrupt. But having the ability then to kind of push through that outer hard exterior of the Polish psyche, gets you into that really warm connection that once you are inside, you are really given the world. They will, yeah.
So how do you crack through that? So the North American way would be ostensibly friendly, smile at people and show them that you're approachable, and show your teeth and be warm and welcoming. My experience in Central Europe has been that kind of behavior doesn't fly well. Not in Poland, not in that area. So your friendly Aussiness probably isn't winning any hearts, right? So how do you crack that hard shell?
Yeah, I just I don't smile. I don't smile. I just keep it low key. I do a lot of listening. Yeah, I do a lot of listening. The first time I came here, I actually whistled inside a store and got abused for it. These kind of outward expressions of joy and happiness they don't actually get you much for much you hear. So it is really building kind of very slowly relationships, I guess. I mean, as you say, I've had the advantage of having connections to the family here, so I get that grace. But it would be, I could see it would be challenging for somebody to come from those cultures where you have to rely on your own to gain credibility.
Do you remember when your Polish family members or when villagers were actually opening up to you? Do you remember what happened for them to let down their guard?
I don't. I think pretty much it was straight away, because I was always. I mean, at first when I came here, I couldn't speak any of the language, so I had to rely on Marta to be with me all the time. And so when she was with me, it was her that basically that was there was really nothing for me to do. I got an open door to it, right?
Right.
Now I'm much more adventurous, and I just say, well, I could exist here pretty much. On my own, I am. Marta's not traveling with me at the moment, so I'm basically here on my own. So I do have that. I have to kind of check that and say, okay, now I don't have somebody I can have as a go-between. Therefore, I just can't rely on that. So, and that's just what it is. Yeah. It's also you have to be cognizant of the hierarchy in the social settings, even in the small villages, right? The small villages have their hierarchy. It's implicit, it's not explicit, and you have to kind of know who's who in the hierarchy, even in the smallest villages. So, and that comes out in conversations, comes out clearly in conversations where people will talk about who is the power base of a local village and who needs to be deferred to, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Janet has a comment here. In the Poconos in Pennsylvania, there's a large Polish community where Janet has a tiny home. She loves visiting the Polish food deli when she's there. So she also asks, what is your favorite Polish dish? So now let it all out, Brett. What do we need? What's the authentic Polishness that goes on the plate so that it qualifies as a Polish meal?
Płatki ziemniaki, which is basically potato pancakes, and it is like crack on a plate, and especially when it's when it's topped with a good goulash, a good hearty goulash with some sour cream. It's just a delight. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Say it again. What are the potato pancakes called?
Płatki ziemniaki. So
ziemniaki.
Ziemniak is the potato. Płatki is the pancake. So it's basically potato pancakes. Yeah. So.
All right. But Janet also has a concern that she thought that the quote unquote lard that was served with the bread was maybe not quite what she was expected. So she's putting the lard in quotation mark. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, this is when I first came to Poland, they were serving this even in the good restaurants. They put it there, and it basically is the dripping, the off dripping of the cooking process, of the meat cooking process. And I remember my grandparents growing up and telling me that when they were poor in the Depression, they were forced to eat bread and dripping. So basically, this is what this is. This is bread and dripping, and again, with a little bit of salt and spread thinly on a nice piece of bread, it is absolutely delightful. Probably not the best thing for your heart, but it is. But it is basically just fat. It is just a fat in a tray, and you dig it out and you spread it like butter. So,
or as Brett said earlier, it's like crack on a plate. Now, I think this is a commonality that we can observe in food cultures around the world, wherever we find regions that experience extended periods of hardship or disaster, where there is a level of food scarcity or a restricted access to a well-balanced nutrition, that the culture develops something delicious out of something that would otherwise be seen as mediocre or inferior. So we make something great out of something that isn't really that exciting to other cultures, right? Something that comes to mind is in Southeast Asian cuisine, you find a lot of stews and soups that use tripe and tendon. It's not the high quality meats. It's stuff that in North American palates wouldn't be non-existing. The drippings that you describe is kind of related or similar to what I know from the Alpine villagers' cuisine, that they render the lard, they render the pork fat, and make that a spread that is seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic, spices, whatever. So there's always been this ingenuity of people who have very little to make something delightful, delicious, maybe not so healthy, but something that's really tasty out of stuff that you might otherwise not think of as great food.
Yeah, and it's actually something I notice in the food here is that there is a lot of, you can see that coming through even in the food that they serve in delis. Obviously, meats are like that. They're usually a conglomeration of many different parts of the animal. But even salads here are, you can get salads that have a lot of cream base in them. So with cucumber and cream, you know, these kind of salads. So they're taking whatever they can to make it a more robust meal and a more nourishing meal in terms of its energy, because the people work so hard. And of course, we might say that it's not particularly healthy, but of course, there's historically not a lot of obesity in a country like this, because a lot of people were working on the farms in the area that I'm in. Most of the people here are rural workers, and it's just very hard to put on weight, even though you're absorbing a lot of this kind of fatty and calorific, is that the word? Food.
So, I know what you're talking about. So since we're talking about rural workers and heavy, high calorie foods, I need to ask this before I let you go. I know you got an appointment at the top of the hour, and I need to let you go. But what about the drinking? Is that part of the trust building process?
It is, yeah, and it's a difficult place for somebody who comes in, especially if you're not a heavy drinker. In a business sense, it can be a challenge here. It's obviously one of those traditions in the Polish, and of course, a lot of the local countries around here, that's a part of the culture. So it does help if you can partake. It does help open those doors, because that's where you really see Polish people let their hair down and open themselves up and be welcoming. So it is, but it's also a problem. It's also a social problem, right? So the consumption of vodka for a lot of, especially the kind of people on the lower socioeconomic ladders in the society here, do turn to, because vodka, for example, is very, very cheap. So it's they have easy access to it. A lot of people make their own versions of it. So it can be a problem in this country and other countries like it for some of the. But I mean, as kind of wealth kind of comes in, we are hoping that that some of that can be alleviated, and there's more awareness around the problems that come with it. But so there's kind of like a positive side of it, where it's a good way to make connection, but there's also a negative side of it, which is just like every, a lot of different parts of society, but it is culture, yeah.
And since you said that's when they let their hair down, it looks, from looking at you, it looks like you let all of your hair down too. Does that mean you partook with your Polish friends and family members, and that helped crack the facade a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm Australian. That comes with the stereotype. I've managed to keep up with them on many occasions. But it is, so it's just part of the culture, and that does help. It does help to be able to you know, be the one that can pour the drinks and also partake of the drinks. So yeah, that's a good part of it. Yeah.
Well, nostalgia to that. By the way, this is empty, so don't get any ideas. It's still morning hours here, right? So, Brett, thank you for giving us a first impression of your time in Poland. You'll be there for a while. We might actually do another episode or two from while you're still there. I'm hoping that you'll find a good Wi-Fi connection somewhere in a public space where we can see some of the fancy Central European ancient architecture to wet the mouths of the North Americans who have who are in travel Turkey. But you're ahead of us a little bit. So there's a little bit of jealousy and also gratefulness for you that you get to enjoy your family over there.
No worries at all, mate. Yep, I'll be traveling next week to Warsaw, so maybe we can connect from there. And also, my favorite city here, of course, is Krakow, and we'll touch on some of the differences between those two cities. And that'll be there's a lot of differences. But anyway, another day. We'll
another episode. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brett. Two Chaps mini cultures on this beautiful Thursday, coming live from Atlanta, Georgia, and a village that will remain unnamed because we want to protect these people's identity and protect Brett from any repercussions from what he just said about the villagers and in Poland. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time. Ciao for now.
See you guys. Bye.